Hi, everyone. Welcome back. This is episode 2 in the series for test-driven development with Laravel 8. In this episode, we're going to write our first test function with PHPUnit. So let's begin. To start off, let's do some housekeeping that we did not do in the last episode. So if I go back to the terminal and run a git status, we see that we have a .vagrant directory that's untracked. This was auto-generated from running vagrant up. So if we run a git log, we also tracked some files that were auto-generated for Homestead. So let's go ahead and copy that commit message for auto-generated files for Homestead and go ahead and track this .vagrant directory and run a git commit -m for message. And let's paste in that last commit message, but instead of Homestead, this is going to be for Vagrant. All right. And one thing we did not do is we did not delete our personal access token from last episode. So let's go back to our GitHub repository and open up settings in a new tab. And once that loads, scroll all the way down and hit developer settings, personal access tokens. And I already deleted mine, but make sure that you are deleting your personal access tokens when you're done for the day. And I'm going to go ahead and generate a new token for today. And it'll be 7 days in case I forget to delete it. It expires quickly, and I will tick repo and workflow, generate token. And we'll go ahead and copy that and leave this screen open, or this tab rather, and go back to my terminal. I'm going to go ahead and do a git push. I got an error, so I'm going to git push again and type in my GitHub username. And paste my token. And perfect. Let's go back to the repository and click on commits. And we should see our new commit newly added to our repository. So let's go ahead and write our first test. If we go back to PHPStorm and let's take a look at our test folder. We see here we're started off with one featured test, example test.php, and it is running a GET request on the web root / and we're ensuring that a response of 200 comes back. So if we go back to our terminal and run a PHP artisan test, we can see here that the two tests that come out of the box as examples for Laravel pass. One is a unit test and one is a feature test. Both feature test is testing the web root with a GET request, and the unit test is just a simple assert true, and this is a real pointless test. So let's go ahead and close that unit test out and create a new test that we can go ahead and modify and work with. So if we go back to iterm and run a PHP artisan make test, we'll call it basic test, enter, and go back to our terminal. And we can see we have a new test here. And let's split this over to the right. And let's see what we've got here. So when we create a new feature test with Laravel, it just starts us off with the skeleton test example function. And let's modify this. I'm going to go ahead and our test that we're going to do is not a test-driven development approach, because what we're doing, we're going to test something that already exists with Laravel. So if we go back to iterm and run a PHP artisan route list, we can see we have a web route here of the web root, just /. And if we go to our web application in the browser, we see that we're able to load this web root location in the browser as a guest, and we're getting this screen here. So let's create our test using a scenario for guest users being able to load the web root and get a successful response. We can also make sure that the correct view is loading and that the correct content is loading on the page as well. Let's go back to our PHPStorm And actually, let's go ahead and run our tests. We should now get 3 successful tests if we run a PHP artisan test, and we do. So let's modify this basic test we have, and we're going to add a comment for a GET request to webroot / as guest user is successful. So we're testing that we can load this webroot as a guest user and that we get a response of successful. And instead of this test underscore example name for the function, let's do something more descriptive. Get webroot as guest is successful. That's pretty self-explanatory. Now let's go ahead and try running the test again. Oh, and we got a warning. It says no test found. So if we go back, we see here that the first word in the functions or the test functions is test. And we removed that and it's get now. So I don't like having test as the first word for each function. It gets a little repetitive. So I'm going to add an annotation here to the comments called test. And that's going to tell PHPUnit that this is a test again. And we're back to passing. And we can see here our function name gets written as a sentence. So get webroot as guest is successful. Let's try and make this test fail, because how do we know this is really working unless we get it failing first? So before we even make the GET request to the webroot, let's ensure that we're an authenticated user, which we know we're not because there is no authentication in this web app yet. So the test should fail right here because we're basically saying, okay, proceed if we are authenticated, which we're not. So let's try PHP artisan test, and we get a failure at line 21 where we're asserting that we're authenticated because that's not true. So let's change this to assert that we're a guest and run the test again, and we pass because we are a guest. And we see here that we're testing the response, that we're having a status of 200, which is great. But let's go a little deeper. Let's test the response and make sure that the view is, well, what is the view? If we go to routes, web.php, we can see that the view being returned for the web root is welcome. So let's go ahead and type in welcome. And let's make sure this fails first. So let's do welcomes, which we know is not the view. PHP artisan test. We get a failure. It says we're expecting welcomes, but the view was actually welcome. So let's go ahead and fix that and run the test again. And we're passing. And let's go a little further. Let's do a response. And let's assert that we see text of, well, Laravel has wonderful, thorough documentation covering every aspect of the framework. Let's go ahead and copy that and see if that passes. Go back to our terminal and run the tests, and it does pass, but let's just make sure. Let's change the word Laravel to Laravels, and we're failing again. So let's change that back and run the test, and we pass. So what are we doing here? This is awesome. We are running a GET request as a guest user and making sure that it's a successful response. The right view is loading and the right text is being seen. So this is a good start. Let's, I say we commit this to the repo. So let's do a git status and let's do a git add on this file. Git status, we should now see that in green. Great, let's commit it with a message of add our first test. Well, let's be a little more professional than that. Add first basic test. Let's run a git push on that. And our personal access token is cached, so it remembers that in this push. If we go back to our GitHub repository and view our commits, where you refresh, we see our new commit in here for add first basic test. And this is a good spot. So let's go back. I'm going to go ahead and take a break here, and I'm going to delete my personal access token and close this tab out. And we are good to go. So see you guys in the next episode, where we're going to continue writing out some featured tests, and we'll interact a little bit with the database.